Just try and get in. Just try and get in the cabin circle.
Welcome to another guide, and this time I'm going to talk about what you can do to improve your own gameplay. Before we start, let me preface this. Hell Let Loose is a team game that revolves around teamwork, communication and coordination. However, there are a lot of concepts and philosophies you can apply to improve your own gameplay and raise it to the next level. Most of these come from other games that have a more evolved and mature esports scene, and we can learn a lot if we look at, for example, Counter-Strike Global Offensive that has been around for years and years. And this game has set the skill ceiling really high. A lot of the techniques I apply in my own gameplay comes from what I've learned over the past few years from playing other shooters like CSGO. In this guide we will be going over the basic settings you can apply to improve visibility, mouse control, how to use positioning correctly, clearing angles, leading shots and so on. There are a few settings you can change to improve visibility, which in turn makes you spot the enemy faster. But I will get back to that later. Let's talk about mouse sensitivity first. In general, the vast majority of the players play with a sensitivity that is way too high. For fast-paced shooters like the good old Quake, a high sensitivity is good, since it's a fast-paced game. Hell Let Loose is the opposite of Quake. It is a slow-paced game. And yes, when you're in the capping point it can get absolutely bonkers, but for the majority you can smell and see enemies coming from miles away. Now, with lower sensitivity you will have way more control over your aim. The general rule of thumb is accuracy over speed. Once you have great accuracy, you will also gradually get faster at aiming. If you look at low sensitivity versus high sensitivity, the benefits will swing in the favor of a low sensitivity. Low sensitivity will give you more control over your aim, prevents overshooting the enemy when you need to snap to a head or leading a shot, and lower sensitivity smooths out the natural twitches and micro adjustments. On the other hand, high sensitivity has some benefits as well. It will give you a faster reaction time, but you're more likely to overshoot your target and it gives you less accuracy and control. Now, keep in mind it also comes down to personal preference. There's no golden number that you can set. It all comes down to practice and what you prefer. Playing with a lower sensitivity will take some time to get used to, especially when coming down from a high sensitivity. My general advice here is decrease it with small increments. If I look at my own settings, for example, I play with 800 dpi set on my mouse and an in-game sensitivity of 8%. Oh, and smooth mouse, big no-no there, just turn it off and avoid it like the plague. Besides mouse sensitivity, there are some other settings you can change to further improve your gameplay, and it's mainly visibility. What I tend to do is turn nameplate opacity down a bit, so the nameplates don't get in the way when playing. It counts for every game turn motion blur off. I play with very low settings for greater visibility, and I'd like to turn up the brightest to around 130%. Unless it's void, cause yeah, snow is white. When it comes to playing Hell Let Loose, positioning is in my opinion the most important thing when it comes to improving in Hell Let Loose. So Hell Let Loose is 70% game sense and positioning, 10% reaction time, 10% pre-aiming angles, and 10% understanding gun mechanics. And also a bit of dumb luck comes into play as well. Everything is tied in with you reading the battlefield correctly and positioning yourself accordingly. Where can you find an opening to get the drop on the enemy? This either can be done by outflanking or rotating around the enemy, or holding a certain angle where they will pop up. Position yourself accordingly to the situation you are in, and always think ahead. If you see everyone attacking a point from the same direction, the main concentration of enemy troops will be holding that direction, and what you will want to do is attack a point from multiple directions. If everyone is attacking from the same direction, it will be a meat grinder. Now, there is a time and place for a meat grinder, but generally speaking, you want to out-rotate or outflank your enemy. When you are moving towards a point or an objective, Don't run through an open field or stand out in the open, but move from cover to cover. Use the terrain to your advantage. This is not a game like Call of Duty. If you have no cover, you are a dead man walking. Always be under the assumption someone is watching you and trying to shoot you. Make sure you have a hedgerow or an object to one of your sides. This saves you an angle that you don't need to clear out where you can be shot from. Also, when sprinting from cover to cover, don't sprint for hours on end, but do it at intervals. Just stop every once in a while to have a look around. Can you see anything moving in your near vicinity? Clear out the area and look around. If you are running and you have no cover, do not run in a straight line, but zigzag, rotate or press S for a second and make it as hard as possible for the enemy to get an easy shot on you. Another thing you can do is use the terrain to your advantage, like walls, Belgian gates, or even get on the roof of houses and use this to your advantage and get a drop on an enemy from a place where they don't expect you. For example, we all know the massive wheat fields where the enemy is hiding in, and if you're in it yourself you can't see anything, which makes it really hard to clear it out. But if you stand on a wall or on a roof of a house, it's really easy to clear out a wheat field. This also makes it easier to spot any garrisons or OPs that are hidden in this field. This comes with a warning though, don't stand too long on a wall, because this will expose you from multiple angles and will make you an easy target to pick up. The next thing is never peek the same angle twice. If you're shooting at the enemy from a corner or the corner of a hedgerow and you killed 1, 2, even more, reposition yourself. The enemy will have seen your muzzle flash or heard the direction you are shooting from. Move to a different cover and engage from there. Else, if you peek the same angle twice, the enemy will be waiting for you to peek that angle and you will be an easy target to pick off. Your surrounding and what is happening around you can also give you a lot of information to work with. Be on the lookout for dead friendly players close to you and ask yourself, where did he get shot from? Because this will tell you there are enemy players around you. Don't go towards the same position where your buddy just got shot, but grab another angle and see if you can pinpoint the general direction he got shot from by either sound, or be on the lookout for a muzzle flash to get the drop on your enemy. This also leads me to my next point. Keep looking around and keep listening. Where are shots coming from? What can you see? Do you see a muzzle flash somewhere or hear an enemy gun going off? Pinpoint the direction and position yourself accordingly to outsmart other players. Here you can run in headfirst towards the enemy position, but in 80 or 90% of the cases, this will result in you being miserable and dead. The key takeaway from this is always think ahead. Try to get yourself in the best position possible to attack, defend or move from. Let's say the OP or garrison is in a bad spot and is getting shelled by artillery or an MG is watching it. Grab another spawn point close by and rotate around the enemy to get the drop on the enemy player. When I am playing in a competitive match or on a public server, I'm always keeping an eye out on the map and open it quite often. This will show me ping locations, the markers for where, example, an enemy garrison is, or general troop movement. I am also looking for which of our OPs or garrisons are blinking red. This will tell you there's at least one or multiple enemies in the near area around it. This could be just one guy or recon running past it, but this one guy can take down the OP or garrison and lose any advantage you gained. It can also be an enemy squad leader to get a sneaky OP or garrison behind your lines. Reading the map correctly can give you a lot of information on what is going on around you, or what you are heading into. Open up your map ever so often, and for example, when I'm reloading behind cover, always open up the map and have a quick look at what is going on around me, and what is happening in different sectors all over the map. In a lot of games I see other players instantly shooting at the enemy the second they see them. This is where leading shots and patience comes into play. Most weapons in Hell Let Loose are one shot to kill an enemy player. If you miss, they will likely see your position and return fire, which you may end up losing and getting killed yourself. This is where patience and leading shots come in. If you see an enemy player running through an open field, don't instantly shoot them. Track them and lead your shot to let them walk into your aim. When an enemy player's running, track them whilst aiming down sight, and then aim a little bit ahead of them to shoot them whilst running. Learn how far ahead you need to shoot when someone is sprinting, and this usually comes through experience and practice. In 90% of the cases they haven't seen you if you positioned yourself correctly, and if they do spot you and stop, you already have your shot lined up to shoot them before they even get the chance to pull the trigger. Also, keep in mind you can shoot through most hedgerows and bushes, so if you're tracking a player and the player just dipped behind the bush, you got your leading right, you might be able to shoot the player through a hedgerow or a bush. He will never see it coming. When it comes to clearing angles, you can close peek a corner or wide peek a corner. Usually players will hug the corner and then look around the corner when hugging the wall, or lean left to look around the corner. Now, if you do this, the enemy player holding the corner will see you first and has the opportunity to shoot first. The closer you are to a corner, the more it will obstruct your vision. The goal is always to be as far away from the corner and the enemy to be as close as possible to a corner. This will give you an advantage when clearing angles, and instead of hugging the wall and do a close peek around the corner, take a few steps back and get some distance between the wall and yourself. This way you can wide peek the corner and you'll see the enemy holding the corner way earlier and get the drop on the enemy player. Crosshair placement isn't exactly the correct title for this topic, since there isn't exactly a crosshair when playing, but I couldn't think of another title for this, so bear with me. In Hell Let Loose there are a lot of common spots where enemy players tend to hide or peek from. Think of windows in a building, on the edge of a hedgerow, and so on. If you are aware of this, you can anticipate and outsmart the enemy by pre-aiming these common spots. Earlier I talked about don't run through an open field, sometimes this is unavoidable. If you do run through an open field, stop at intervals, have a look around, and place your aim at spots where you expect the enemy to peek from. Another thing you can do is keep an eye out for windows or attics, and this is a common spot where a lot of players will hide and shoot from, since this gives a lot of cover and it gives you the high ground. We already talked about that most weapons in Hell Let Loose are one-shot weapons. This means a shot to the body is just as deadly as a shot to the head. This comes with a footnote though. The one-shot, one-kill rule depends on the distance, but in general this rule applies. We all know how satisfying the ding sounds can be. The head of a player is so much smaller of a target than the torso of a player. Do not take the risk and do not go for a fancy headshot. Instead, take the safer option and aim for the torso. It is just as deadly as a shot to the head, and since this is a larger target, it will reduce your chances of missing the shot. When aiming down sight, do not point your sight towards the ground to look over it and trying to spot enemy players, but instead look through or past the iron sight. This way you will have your aim lined up for taking a shot when you spotted an enemy player. If you aim your gun a bit towards the ground and you spot an enemy player, you will have to realign and lose valuable time. The last thing about crosshair placement, most of the bushes and hedgerows in Hell Let Loose are not solid and you can shoot through it. Sometimes you can see an enemy player shooting from behind a hedgerow or a bush by spotting their muzzle flash. You can line up your shot by predicting where the enemy is standing, take the shot, and the enemy player will be none the wiser as where you shot him from. In every shooter, sound plays an important role. Sound will help you locate enemy movement close by. It also can give you audio cues where an enemy garrison or OPs are. Set up your sound options accordingly so you can hear enemy footsteps near you and other audio cues. Other audio cues you can go by are aircraft sounds, for example. These are not just ambient sounds, but they actually have a function. If you hear an aircraft flying over, check the sky to see enemy supply drops or spot an enemy airhead before it lands, and learn and recognize the different kinds of sounds that weapons make. This will let you make the distinction between friendly and enemy weapons. Once you learn these different sounds, you can use it to pinpoint the direction where the enemy is shooting from. To close out the video, let's go over some general tips and tricks, and most of them I picked up along the way from watching other players play or by playing the game a lot. Practice and routine. To improve yourself at the game, practice and consistency is key. With this I mean play a little bit every day, but do not burn yourself out on the game. You don't need to play hours on end every day, but play on a consistent basis, even if it's for 15 to 30 minutes. This will train your muscle memory and makes you a bit better every time you play. Even if you don't feel like playing, just fire up the game, play for let's say 15 minutes to shoot a few enemies to practice your aim a bit, and then just log off. And also taking a few days off of the game will get you back in the game sharp and focused. There's a fine balance between this and you will have to figure it out for yourself what works for you. The next one is be patient, and that's a critical one. Hell Let Loose is not your typical shooter like Counter-Strike, Call of Duty and so on. A lot of players hear or see the action and tend to run in the action head first, spawning, running and dying on a repeated cycle. Instead, be patient, assume you're constantly looked at and under constant threat of getting shot at. Take a step back and look around what is going on around you. Move from cover to cover, and if you do spot enemies, be on the lookout if there are more enemies around you. Sometimes it's better to hold your fire and not give your position away than instantly firing, picking up one kill instead of 4, 5 or even destroying the enemy OP. Communication is king. I can't stress this enough. Hell Let Loose is a team-based game, and to be effective in your squad you need to communicate, cooperate and coordinate with your team. Feed information to your squad mates by pinging enemies or where they're dropping supplies and so on, and also be precise and effective in your communication. Just don't say enemy left of me, instead ping the location or give a direction where the enemy is, like southwest 310. Give clear, short and precise information. Over to some more practical tips and tricks. Have you ever found yourself running into an enemy whilst reloading? Well, I certainly have on multiple occasions. You can cancel the reloading animation by quickly switching to something else in your inventory, for example by pressing number 2 and then switching back to your main weapon. However, you can only do this at the start of the animation, and you will have to find the point up until you can cancel the animation yourself by practicing and trying it out. When vaulting or jumping over an object, keep pressing and hold the spacebar. In many cases you can grab onto a vault point at a wall that is too high to jump over, or to jump on a roof that seems just out of reach, but if you press and hold spacebar when jumping to it, it will latch onto a vaulting point and get you over the wall or on the roof of a house. Bandaging. If you are hit by another player and bleeding out, you don't have to use a bandage straight away. The bleed out time is very forgiving in Hell Let Loose, and you can use this to your advantage, either by using this time to let the enemy player empty his weapon, forcing him to reload and then you peek again, or to reposition yourself and get the enemy player from a different angle. A thing I picked up through playing different shooters is do not stand still. I am always moving, even if it's strafing left and right with the A and D key, or if I'm holding an angle or looking from the edge of a hedgerow, I'm always moving left and right a bit to make myself a harder target to hit. The second I spot an enemy, I stand still and line up my shot properly. Last but not least, keep in mind that Hell Let Loose is a team/squad game. It doesn't only boil down to individual gameplay, but you can have a bigger impact on the game if you improve as a player. I hope you learned a thing or two from this guide, and hopefully it will help you improve at playing the game. Feel free to leave a comment with feedback, or if you have any questions you have, feel free to ask them, and I will see you in the next one.